My final guest is New York Times best-selling author Casey McQuiston, whose novels include the LGBTQ romantic comedies Red, White, and Royal Blue. That's one that's on my list to read. One Last Stop, and their latest release, I Kissed Shara Wheeler. Excuse me. Welcome, Casey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, well, we're so excited to have you. Like I said before, you've written 3 LGBTQ inclusive angles and stories. What is the feedback you've gotten from these books? I know that this representation hasn't existed in novels or books in general before, back in history, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing I hear from readers is just how exciting it is to walk into a bookstore and see a book on a shelf that you can relate to, that features people in relationships like yours, with friends like yours, having experiences that that you can relate to, especially for a lot of romance readers, because it is such a personal genre, and it's a genre that is so based in feelings, like being able to relate to those feelings on such a deep and intrinsic and sort of fluent queer level, I think means a lot to a lot of readers who haven't been able to find that as easily before.
And, speaking of the inclusion of LGBTQ characters, people, content in these stories, how has that evolved in literature? I mean, it seems to me, and granted, I could have missed this before, but, I haven't really noticed these characters, this content, these stories until, probably within the last 10 years. I mean, tell us about how that's evolved and what your experience has been like being in that evolution.
Yeah, I think that those stories did exist, but they were so hard to find. Often they were not very accessible. They were, indie published, very small runs, like from small presses, or they were only ebook, and you had to know somebody who knew something about the stuff to be able to find it. When I was growing up, I grew up in Southern Louisiana, and I didn't have a local indie, and what I had access to was what was sold at Walmart or Books A Million, and so, you get what you get. And it's been incredible to watch, especially, I would say even in the last 5 years, it has really, really accelerated the amount of books that you can walk into like a major retailer and just see them on an end cap display, see them on a Pride table. It's so exciting for me, both as a queer person and a queer writer, to know that there's not going to be a kid who is walking through a bookstore lost the way that I did, just like wondering, where on earth do I find a book that can show me, a queer story that has a happy ending. I think that it's the trajectory is moving in the right direction, but we still have a lot of ground to cover in terms of diversifying what is on the shelves. I would love to see an even broader range of queer fiction. I would love to see shelves just overflowing with queer romance and trans romance, which we don't have nearly enough of. So an incredible acceleration and accessibility for these books, but also makes me very excited about what more there is to come.
Earlier in the program, I was talking to Corey Barnard. He's a kindergarten teacher in Florida. He's openly gay, and he's really been impacted by the Don't Say Gay bill, or parental rights in education legislation that's now law in that state. And it seems like recently there's really been a push to crack down on or censor a lot of LGBTQ plus materials in classrooms. Are you at all concerned that that could go beyond classrooms and enter realms like bookstores? Or do you think that this is a culture war that's really been sequestered to the education space?
Oh, that's a good question. I loved the interview with Corey, by the way, I was watching. I'm definitely concerned about what's going on in educational spaces. I've done this past year a lot of conferences, meeting with educators and librarians who are, kind of our frontline defense in this fight. And they are tired, and they are being harassed every day, especially in red states or conservative areas. But really, honestly, it could be any school district in America. Somebody is calling and harassing a librarian somewhere. And it's definitely concerning. I think about how many teen readers I've interacted with who have come to me with such genuine emotion of just how deeply it has changed their ability to have hope for their future, to see a queer story that is joyful and escapist and has a happy ending in fiction, whether it's my book or another book. I really can't overstate how much it means to these kids to have that representation. When you're that age, sometimes escaping into fiction is like a lifesaver. And so that's, not only am I worried about those kids losing access, but I'm also worried about what kind of messaging they're internalizing from their parents, calling their school and saying, this is not fit for my kid to read, when it's depicting what that kid is, so that's a huge concern for me. But I think as far as retailers go, I'm not as concerned on that front now. I think it's definitely a scary time to be any type of queer person in America. But somebody who's writing queer books right now, you do have to kind of constantly check the temperature of the water. And the louder the backlash gets, the more those corporate interests are feeling a little threatened. They're like, oh, is the wind changing, or do we need to like pull back to preserve our profits? So that's always scary. And that's always something that we, I think, have in mind as queer writers. But I also think that the major retailers are out here putting out books, and they want books that sell, and they want books that make readers excited and engaged. And I think that queer books are doing that right now for them.
Right, right. And I mean, we talk about the retailers, but do you see that with publishers as well? I mean, we see that more children and more people in general are, seem to be feeling more comfortable to come out and live their authentic lives, be their authentic selves. So I would imagine that publishers, it would behoove of them to publish books that are appealing to their audience.
Yeah, no, and I think publishers know that, and I think it started in YA really, and we're seeing it really spill over into adult romance now. With the last few years, this wave of queer adult romance books coming out from the big five, kind of those big name publishers that everyone knows of, like what we call big five publishers. And I also know so many people on so many levels of the publishing industry who are queer and trans folks who are really, really deeply invested in championing those stories. And those are the ones who are really advocating for those stories and convincing people that it's more than just a bottom line. It's also, this is why we're here. Aren't we here to tell stories that matter? Aren't we here to tell stories that can make somebody's life better or even save somebody's life? And those people are doing hard work to advocate for stories by people like me, which shout out to those people. They're amazing.
And Casey, before I let you go, I'm sure there are many young LGBTQ plus writers or aspiring writers who are looking up to you right now and who would love to follow in your path. What's one piece of advice you would like to give them?
Oh, wow. I mean, I have, can I do two? Is that cheating?
Of course. No, please do.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I feel like I say to every young person who comes through one of my signing lines is I like to tell them, like, you are okay, like you are good. And not in the sense of like, you're going to be okay, but in the sense of like, there is nothing wrong with you. You have nothing to apologize for being who and what you are exactly and unapologetically. And no matter what kind of environment you're in or who's trying to make you feel any type of way about that part of you, that is the coolest and most brave and vibrant part of you. And it's going to be the thing that takes you farthest in life, no matter how scary it feels right now. So I say that to all queer young people, because I think that's important to hear, and I needed to hear it when I was that age. Specifically for queer writers, don't be afraid to take risks. I mean, when I wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue, my first book, it was, 2016, and there were not really a lot of mainstream, traditionally published queer romantic comedies for adults. And I sent it out to agents, and people were like, oh, we don't know about this. But I bet on it, and I found people who were willing to bet on it, and I went in with my whole heart. And I think that was what took it to where it ended up going. And it's really scary to come out as a queer person and to do work from your queer heart and hope that the world's going to be ready for it. But when you put your whole queer heart into it, I really do believe, not to sound a little too Pollyanna here, but I do believe that comes through in the work, and it's infectious, and it brings more and more people in to advocate that work and get it where you want it to go.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for all of your time today. Like I said, you're inspiring a generation of younger people in the community. So once again, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to Casey McQuiston, New York Times best-selling author. That brings us to the end of our program. A big thank you to our speakers and to all of you attendees joining us for this discussion. For those of you who missed any of the conversations, not to worry, we will have a video up from the event on our website shortly. I'm Julia Manchester. Have a great day and be well.